In December of 2020, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗓, on his last day at office as the SEC's chair, decided to drop a lawsuit on Ripple, claiming that they had sold unregistered securities in the form of XRP. Since then, we have seen a 77.7% drop in the market value of XRP, creating billions of dollars worth of damage to retail investors, the very retail investors that the SEC claimed to be protecting. We then went into 2021 with a pretty poor performance for the bullish market, and we have seen 2022 and to a start of 2023 here being pretty turbulent for the price action of XRP, all courtesy of the SEC over in the United States. Now we are in 2023 and we have got some interesting things going on with the case against Ripple from the SEC, and hopefully a decision as to whether or not Ripple will win, the SEC will win, or in fact maybe it will go to trial. Either way, things are slowly kind of working their way up to conclusion. In this video, we're going to be talking about why holding and hodling 10,000 or more XRP might be one of the best decisions that you make. And as I get into this video, if you find it useful, informative, maybe even entertaining at times, smash that like button. We do appreciate that. Helps push the content to more like-minded individuals. If you're new to the channel, why not consider subscribing? What have you got to lose? You can always unsubscribe later. And of course, if you haven't yet joined us in Discord, why not check it out? Linked in the description down below. It is a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free, and I really don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. Okay, let's get into the meat of this one. So here we have some charts, right? This one here is XRP paired up with USDT on the daily chart, and Binance is our data source. We can see that there has been some interesting movements in the price action. So as I said, we had our nice peak up here for the flare snapshot. We then saw the lawsuit get dropped on Ripple, and we saw billions of dollars of damage done to the XRP investors, retail investors, I will add. 77% of the value was dropped before we went into that bullish market. Now, we did move up a reasonable amount. It is nothing significant compared to the potential of what it could have been, but we did move up just about 1,000%. To put that into context, Bitcoin moved up 2,800%, and Bitcoin should be the worst performing asset in terms of percentage gains because it is on an elasticity curve and essentially less gains over time. You get diminishing gains over time. So we really did have stunted growth. And again, this stunted growth was on the back of 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗓's lawsuit. Even though he was advised not to drop this lawsuit on Ripple, he went ahead and did it on his last day anyway, like an absolute... Yeah, well, I'll let you fill that blank in. Nonetheless, we will kind of persevere and we'll carry on. We did see some fantastic opportunities and we were able to kind of ride this up. And we've seen some pretty turbulent price action to the downside during 2022 and 2023. Now, as we can kind of take a look at this, we have our trend line to the downside. We tapped this a couple of times, so in fact 4 times, and we are finding ourselves consolidating on this trend line at the moment. Now, this, in my eyes, is a bit of a bullish setup, but I don't think it's really what investors want to see right at this moment in time, specifically with the economic climate not looking overly great. I do think there is going to be a run to the upside soon, and it can be kind of short-lived though. I don't expect the big bang to the upside just yet. This essentially makes me very nervous about what is going to be decided by the judge in terms of whether Ripple win, SEC win, or whether it will go to trial. Personally, like I said yesterday, I think it will go to trial, and therefore we'll have a bit of a mini run here and then just come back down again. Ultimately, we find ourselves in a little bit of a ranging market, but as I said, there is a bit of a short-term bullish setup here. The lower lows and the lower highs essentially sets ourselves up for a bit of a run to the upside. As you can kind of see just here, we had this little mini run upwards, and I would expect another little mini run up here as well. From an Elliott wave theory point of view, we'd look at this as a 3-wave structure. So I do think that there's some potential to the upside on the short time frame, but really this video is about the macro, right? Essentially why buying and holding at least 10,000 XRP, which might be a bit of a stretch target for newbies, but I think a lot of people who've been in this industry for a little while could have accumulated 10,000 reasonably easily over the last few years. Let's take a look at 2020, and you can kind of see some pretty decent prices at around 12 cents, all the way through to where we are recently with a lower 30 cent that I've recently scooped up some XRP on. So, I think there is still a bit of a progression for newbies to kind of get to that number, but I think for the most people who've been in the space, they're kind of already there or thereabouts, or maybe even have a significant amount more XRP. But 10,000 is a nice round number. It allows for nice, easy calculations, and you can kind of change this depending on your own targets and all that kind of stuff. So I think 10,000 is a nice number for the most everyday person to kind of be aiming for, because I do think that on the back of this lawsuit, we'll see some rapid movements to the upside in terms of price action. So all that's looking pretty good. So when we start thinking about this and we start thinking about the bigger macro piece and knowing that we've kind of consolidated down quite nicely, I do think anything lower than 35 cents should be DCA territory. I think essentially this is going to be the area where you're going to be able to kind of accumulate the most. You're going to see price kind of come into this range, out of this range, may even come down a little bit lower, and you can continue to DCA at that point. Obviously, just note, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice. All I can give you is my thoughts and opinions on the data in the charts and what I personally would do in approach to the markets. So in the case of XRP, if price comes down lower than 35 cents, I think that's a good DCA or dollar cost average opportunity. But do expect price to kind of move around a little bit. Now, this is just the daily chart. When we kind of take this up into our weekly, we can see some interesting things. So the first thing that we need to kind of acknowledge is that we have this change of characteristic. Okay, this change of characteristic basically takes us into March of 2020 down here. We can see the initial kind of surge to the upside. This basically becomes a three-wave corrective structure. You can see that the lawsuit that was dropped in 2020 over here, you can see how it pulled us down, and it just so happened to be just lower than this wick high on this side. Okay, so you can see this kind of can be considered a double top to a degree. But we do break this structure and we create this change of characteristic later in the bullish market. This is happening around April, happens around April time, 2021. Now, from an Elliott Wave theory point of view, coupled with the smart money concepts that you see on the screen here, we can articulate this as a three-wave corrective structure upwards. Now, of course, we are looking at this move to the downside, and we can start to think, okay, well, we're a little bit further beyond what we would typically expect of a three-wave structured move to the downside. But instead, we're not trending either. So instead, we have to kind of look at this thing as potentially a W, X, Y, X, and Z, and we just have a small little dip maybe down into the 20s at some point in the future. Okay, so like I said, it goes to trial. You might see some negative price action that might just bring that down a fraction more. Now, ultimately, all of this, to me, would basically allow us to kind of think of these as corrective structures with this change of characteristic to the upside, meaning that on a bigger scale, we could kind of take a look at this maybe as a corrective move on a weekly time frame or even monthly time frame up into significant heights. Now, the lawsuit compounds this issue because here we would have a pretty typical kind of structured move, okay, that would allow us to kind of see this market move in this kind of direction and be pretty standard, right? We could see $5.56 there pretty comfortably, and in fact, you could probably even push towards the $11 range on the 1.236 fibs extension. Okay, this wouldn't be unusual by any stretch of the imagination. However, it is possible that this overextends with a lot of FOMO action around the lawsuit, and the lawsuit could drive out a trend-based structure within this C wave, which basically means that we could kind of see this thing extend out a lot further if needs be. It's not a guarantee, but it's something that we should be aware of as a possibility. For example, we could have a really good wave 1, some kind of mini wave 2 correction, usually about 50%, maybe up to 88%, and then a really parabolic kind of wave 3, wave 4, and then wave 5 could potentially be pushing up into those higher ranges outside of the typical kind of C wave structure. But that would only happen if we have a impulsive trend at the end or contained within this C wave. If this C wave contains a corrective structure, well, in which case we'll be looking at the 1 to the 1.236 extensions as the area that we'll be thinking about for price action. So when we start thinking about where we are right now, how far this thing can potentially go, it's not going to be the best performer necessarily if we only have standardized kind of move like this. It would be, you know, maybe 2,000% or so, something maybe 3,000 if we're lucky, something similar to kind of BTC. However, if we do get that kind of FOMO action, which I do think we will probably more than likely get, and we have that impulsive structure, then I think the percentage gains could be absolutely absolutely parabolic. I think we could see very, very significant. You know, we could see maybe 5,000, maybe even push up towards the 10,000%. So there's a lot of potential to XRP, and which is why I think buying and holding at least 10,000 XRP could be a really smart move. Now, that is just from a technical analysis point of view. There are a lot of fundamental reasons as to why you might want some exposure into XRP as well, right? And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about on the channel, more in the Discord than we do publicly on kind of Bitcoin videos and things like that. But essentially, XRP definitely is something that you kind of want to really research. There's a lot of noise out there with a lot of kind of moon boy kind of esque price predictions, crazy stuff going on, you know, with 𝗦𝗖𝗔𝗡𝗪𝗔𝗏 accounts and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, if you kind of move away from the noise, what we're really talking about in terms of XRP is, of course, RippleNet and essentially liquidity. Liquidity is key to kind of moving money around and being able to buy and sell without moving the markets. That's essentially what liquidity does. So in order for liquidity to work, you need to have buyers and you need to have sellers, and they basically need to be very, very liquid, right? Everything needs to be really, really liquid. So you need a lot of sellers and you need a lot of buyers, and you need to be able to transact. And that's really where XRP really could potentially come in the future, creating this on-demand liquidity, right, at ODL, and all those kind of fundamental things. Now, the XRPL in itself also has some really fantastic things coming out for it, right? We can see lots of interesting emerging markets being introduced into the XRPL, and I do think there's a lot of benefit to the crypto space as a whole. So I think there's a lot of different things from a fundamental standpoint that XRP can facilitate, not just cross-border payments, which is most commonly known for, but a whole host of additional things as well. So from a technology point of view, I should say, all the way through to the technical analysis point of view, I think exposure to XRP is something that most people are probably going to want to have. It's more, even if you're just speculating on the lawsuit, I think there's going to be a pretty significant surge to the upside on the back of that anyway. And that's going to be basically just FOMO driven, people speculating on price action more than it is about, thinking about the actual fundamental use cases of XRP and the XRPL. But essentially, I think Ripple are also fighting the corner for crypto, right? Which I think is critically important. So any way that we can support Ripple with trying to fight the corner of crypto, I think is critically important as well. The US definitely do have their guns drawn when it comes to cryptocurrency exchanges and various other kind of stablecoin projects in the space. Essentially, they are trying to really squeeze this space down. They don't like this technology. It's a challenge to the ecosystem that they currently are heavily invested in, and they don't want it. But unfortunately, this isn't for them. It is for the people. That is why Bitcoin was created. It was created to avoid these kind of situations. And although regulations are going to be a requirement, we need to find a nice, healthy balance. In the US, the way that they're going about doing this, regulation through enforcement, not only is it criminal, in my opinion, people also need to be able to kind of, see those people and those individuals who are kind of pushing this narrative, see jail time, right? I think it is criminal, and I think there should be consequences to that degree for it, such as Mr. 𝗕𝗓𝗪 and the way that he's allowed these things to unfold with FTX under his watch. I mean, any other CEO of any company that had such a catastrophic failure of management, and to see such a thing like that occur would have had their head, right? And they would have had to have had their notice, and they would not be getting employed in many other places. Why is 𝗕𝗓𝗪 going around still going, filing all these lawsuits? Where's the consequences for his negligence, and why hasn't he kind of, offloaded his team whilst resigning, so you can get some fresh blood and maybe some younger blood in who actually understand the technology and want to push this industry forward rather than this legacy that needs to die out quite clearly. Nonetheless, that's my rant over when it comes to the SEC and all their nonsense. I do think that on the back of the lawsuit, there's going to be a lot of FOMO action. I do think we're going to see some pretty decent price action for XRP in the future, but do expect a little bit of volatility beforehand. Like I said, my expectations are this will go to trial. I'd like to be wrong on that. I would love it to be that Ripple win. If Ripple lose, of course, they will appeal, and it'll go to Supreme Court, and that could take some time as well. So expect it to kind of drag out, essentially. I'm not expecting Ripple to win, but as much as I'm not expecting it, I would love that to be the case. Let me know what your thoughts are on XRP. Do you own 10,000? Are you looking to own at least 10,000, or do you already own a lot more than that? Do you think the price action is going to be, decent, but not with not to those crazy numbers that you see a lot of other moon boys talking about? Do you think it's going to be contained within, at least under the 1.618 here, about $34? Or do you think, in fact, you're going to be pushing up to these higher numbers like $600 or whatever? Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Personally, I'm going to be a lot more conservative and lock in those gains on the way up as we see these key levels getting hit. I'm going to leave the video there. If you found it useful and informative, maybe even entertaining with my rant, then why not hit that like button? I do appreciate that. Subscribe. What have you got to lose? Join us in Discord. And guys, I'll catch you all in the next one.